Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu amma ba'd. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ونزلنا عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين صدق الله العظيم سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما رب زدنا علما. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We return after some time with the Islamic eschatological analysis of global events for the month of April 2015. In this month, we have had some assorted incidents, events, but we'd like, for the most parts, to focus attention on a single event, what has since then been referred to as the Big Himalayan Quake. I'm talking about the earthquake with its epicenter in Nepal, near Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, some 80 kilometers from it. Now, this has actually shaken the world quite literally and metaphorically as well, and we would like to spend some time on this issue. And then we would like to touch upon a few other points, which events which happened in this month as well. So let's begin with the earthquake in Nepal, with its epicenter some 80 kilometers from Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, and its effect reached far and wide. Kolkata, from where we are speaking in India, it's some 1000 kilometers, about 800, a little more maybe, kilometers from Kathmandu, the epicenter of the earthquake. And the magnitude of the earthquake was such that Kolkata has never experienced an earthquake as strong as this one ever, not at least in my lifetime. And the buildings just shook. I mean, the shaking was definitely the strongest that has happened in Kolkata, at least that I'm aware of, or at least in my lifetime. So on the first day, there were two consecutive days on which the earthquake occurred on April 25 and April 26, 2015. On the first day, it was measured 7.9 on the Richter scale, which is actually huge, which is colossal, which is massive. If you are aware of the Richter scale measurements, that is. And on the second day, it was 6.5. And far and wide, the effects reached to Delhi, to Kolkata, both in India, to other parts in India as well, and towards the north in China, in Tibet, and other parts. The effect could be felt. And by the time it reached Kolkata on the first day, where the epicenter measured 7.9, it was still about 5 on the Richter scale. This may be to some of you somewhat confusing, but to give things in perspective, the buildings in Kolkata would not survive if the earthquake reached a level of 5.5. That's how close it was. So 5.5 means nothing would survive. And by the time it reached some 800 kilometers from the epicenter, it was still strong enough to measure on the scale, on the Richter scale, of 5. So the buildings shook quite violently by any experience that Kolkatans have had in the past. So what are we discussing about? Even before we try to discuss or bring this discussion to the table, let us just focus or draw your attention to a particular hadith statement narrated by Imam Bukhari in his Sahih in Kitab al-Fiqh in book number 92, chapter number 25, hadith number 7121. And in this particular hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah radhiyallahu anhu, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that the last hour will not be established till, and he gave us a number of signs. This is not a part of the major signs in the last age. It's still considered to be among the minor signs. But then there are some 11 signs narrated in this hadith. We are not interested in all. We are just focusing on one of the signs that it said that in the last age, the earthquakes will increase in number and it will become more frequent. The earthquakes will increase in number and it will become more frequent. Earthquakes, the connotation has always been of a natural earthquake. In fact, the term natural would seem very unnatural some maybe 100 years back even. But today we know that earthquakes can be natural as well as man-made or artificial earthquakes. The concern, I mean, we're not concerned about death and life. That's in the hands of Allah. What we're concerned is about understanding the reality of what's going around, in and around us, what's happening really. That's important. And much of the manipulation has to do with the corruption and the fitna of the Dajjal. People don't understand these things. It's difficult for them to comprehend these things. We will just make an effort to help you relate and bring everything together. There is another hadith statement which I think we should bring to the table for our discussion for today, and that is also a hadith, a very important hadith actually. It's narrated by Imam Muslim in his Sahih, in Kitab al-Fitan wa Asharat al-Sah, in book number 54, chapter number 20, the chapter on the Dajjal. I mean, the topic could not have been any more suitable. The Bab al-Dajjal, the chapter on Ad-Dajjal, and hadith number 2937a. And in this particular hadith, it's a long hadith narrated by Nawas bin Sam'an radhiyallahu anhu, and the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, and to cut the long hadith short, let's eliminate from the beginning and at the end, and does not break any continuity in understanding. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that he, the Dajjal, will give a command to the sky and there will be rainfall, and crops would grow, and he would come to a people and they would accept him, and these are for them. And he would go to another people and they would reject him, and there would be drought, and they will be totally devoid of all wealth. They would find themselves totally devoid of all wealth. So those are some of the consequences. This is a very great test that's approaching us. But what is this hadith all about? That the Dajjal would command the sky and there would be rainfall. What is it all about? That's the focal point of our attention and discussion, and that's why we brought forth the hadith in the first place for analysis. It's about what is referred to as climate control or weather control. Climate or weather, sometimes used interchangeably. Of longer duration it's called climate, and on a day-to-day basis it's called weather patterns. So it's about climate manipulation and weather manipulation. Is that possible? Is it possible? How will the Dajjal be able to do it? It's already in place. If you know about HAARP, HAARP, it's a high frequency active auroral research project. It's not just a research project, it's a complete strategy to manipulate and control climate and weather. Now HAARP, there has been a lot discussed about HAARP. It has a potential to, it's an American organization, and they claim obviously that it's just a research project. It's not just a research project, it's a complete climate and weather manipulation tool, and there are mechanisms to do it. We are not discussing and going to the physics, though we can to an extent. I don't think it's necessary to do that over here in this session, at least when we are trying to discuss about the entire monthly analysis as a whole. If required, we'll have a separate video. So this HAARP, what does it do, or what it has the potential to do? What it has the potential to do is it can trigger earthquakes, among other things. It can trigger floods. It can be used to trigger hurricanes, and these sort of climate and weather manipulation and control is possible through HAARP mechanism and tools. That's the sort of devastating effect it can have. Now, we will actually try to inject a small demonstration, an experiment, how HAARP can be used to trigger earthquakes. I think it's best to just show it to you now before we take this discussion forward. So let's watch it quickly.
To say that HAARP can artificially excite the ionosphere in such a way to cause an earthquake, well, it alarms me.
Dr. Agnew experienced the power of ELF waves firsthand back in the 1980s. He was hired by an energy company to locate oil and gas using the same kind of ELF waves at much lower frequencies to carry out his search. It's a process called Earth tomography. But during one particular incident, Dr. Agnew believes his use of HAARP-like ELF waves accidentally triggered an earthquake.
It was in the spring of 1987 we arrived in Roseburg, Oregon to use our ELF technology to search for oil and gas. Setting up that day, we had a little bit different results than we expected because the instant that we energized it, there was between a 4 and 4.5 on the Richter scale earthquake that occurred. We were so amazed about what seemed to be cause and effect. We get to an area that has a high propensity for earthquakes in an area known as the megathrust of the Pacific Northwest. We turn it on and an earthquake occurs.
Dr. Agnew demonstrates how he may have triggered the quake.
This is a scale model of what the area looked like in Oregon when we scanned for oil and gas in 1987. The strata right here represents the megathrust area underneath the ground. The rock represents the potential energy set up in the ground from a tectonic stress. What we're going to do is introduce ELF waves and demonstrate that it can in fact trigger an earthquake.
In this case, Dr. Agnew is using a stereo speaker to produce the ELF waves needed for his demonstration.
ELF waves, extremely low frequency waves, are just like a subwoofer. In your car, you can actually feel the vibrations through your body. ELF waves are the same way. They vibrate the earth, and at right resonant frequencies, they can have devastating effects.
When the speaker is activated, ELF waves begin to emit. Tiny vibrations in the sand are detected. Then a few seconds later, the rock representing the fault line shifts.
As you can see, in a very few seconds, the resonant frequency built up in our model released the potential energy in the rock. That concussion, on a real scale, would have been felt for 100 miles. These conditions are already set up in the ground. All it takes is the activation energy to make the release happen. This is a small scale, and we're only using 30 watts in this scale.
When HAARP's broadcast array in Gakona, Alaska sends pulses of ELF waves into the ionosphere, the waves get reflected back down and pass through the Earth and ocean. If 3.6 million watts of ELF waves were purposely or accidentally aimed at an already unstable fault line, it could, according to Dr. Agnew, cause a tremendous earthquake.
Okay, now that we have watched about the effect, how HAARP can be used for climate and weather control, and specifically we have seen about the triggering the earthquake. Now, when we read in the hadith, in the first hadith that we narrated today about earthquakes, I said that earthquakes in the last age can be triggered, or the causes can be both natural as well as completely artificial and man-made. HAARP is a way to achieve that, to trigger earthquakes. These are man-made and artificial techniques to do so, and it has devastating consequences. The number of deaths in the recent Nepal earthquake crossed some 6,000 casualties. I mean, we need to understand the roots of what's happening in and around us. Dajjal has a total control over the economic system, over the political system, over the mess that it has created with feminism, and it has impacted and brainwashed such large numbers of the female population. He has a total control of everything, anything and everything, it seems, in this age. He has not left the food, he has not left the weather and the climate patterns, all sorts of things. So now what I want to say is that it has been feared that there can be some aftershocks with the same epicenter, and now we need to discuss about the Richter scale to show to you how much more the devastating effects can be. Now, the recent earthquakes was as measured on the Richter scale 7.9, and it has been feared that an earthquake with the same epicenter can have a magnitude of as high as 9.4. Now, how much more is 9.4 than 7.9? We need to have this understanding a little bit, not in very details. It will confuse you, and it's not a mathematics class either. The Richter scale is a logarithmic scale. That means, for example, if you have on the Richter scale a number 2, the earthquake which measures 2 on the Richter scale, and an earthquake which measures 4 on the Richter scale, it doesn't mean 4 is twice as greater than 2. It's not just twice. It's not a linear scale. It's not a linear scale. It's not starting at 0 and a number line continues. It's a logarithmic scale. What that essentially means is 3 on the Richter scale is 10 times more than 2, and 4 is 10 times more than 3. So 4 is 10 times 10 of 2, that is 100 times more than 2. So 9.4 is actually 32 times on the Richter scale, 32 times the magnitude of the earthquake. What it means is, when you check the Richter scale, it starts with 2.0, less than that, and there are various grades, 2.0 to 2.9 and 3.0 to 3.9, and I've explained to you the Richter scale already in brief. And then the last that is given is 9.0. Beyond that, nothing is mentioned. I mean, it's a massive destruction, colossal destruction. 9.0 and above, it's classified as the ultimate form of destruction. There's no gradation. So 9.4 actually lies in that range. So, and the problem is that these things, most of which is happening, is not natural. The causes are not natural. This is a concern. The concern is not life and death. That's in the hands of Allah. For 6,000 people in Nepal who passed away, the moment had come. For others who managed to survive, the moment had not come as yet. Our moment has not come as yet. So we survived the earthquake. As I said, 5.0, it reached Kolkata. 5.5, all the buildings would have collapsed in Kolkata. It does not have the capacity to bear that sort of strain. The buildings in Kolkata does not have that capacity. So when the moment comes, it comes. You can't do anything about it. Even as we speak, anything can happen. We don't have these things under control. Even as we speak, it may not be even uploaded on YouTube for you to see. It's very much possible. What we are saying is, you should have this awareness. What is causing the triggers? What are the causes to these effects? And you would be able to have some semblance of idea how great their manipulation in every aspect of human life is. The Zionists I'm talking about. So that's it basically about the earthquake in Nepal. And you've seen the HAARP video, how it has been triggered, or how it can be used to trigger. I mean, if it can be used to trigger floods and hurricanes and earthquakes, what's left on the land, in the air, in the water? What's left? Nothing is left. It's total control, and that's what the other hadiths which we narrated elaborated, that the Dajjal would have total control over the climate and the weather, and that's what's happening. It's real. Okay, so this was about. I don't know if I've taken just too much time to explain to you these things, but then these things were important. And in any case, we're not going to discuss a whole lot of issues in this month's analysis. The other piece of information that I found interesting, there were quite a few. Two of the other points it's worth just bringing in. One of which is Baghdadi has apparently died. Now, what's going on over here? Is it some sort of success that those who wage a war against terrorism has been able to achieve success? No, that's not what we believe in. That's the news, the way it has been presented. That's what they want you to believe. We don't believe in that at all. The person, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, is the person who goes by the name Simon Elliot, or is it Elliot Shimon? That's the Hebrew name. He's a Jew. Probably he's been fed up of living life in the desert, and so he wants to go back to New York. So they just kill off Baghdadi, and now he can go back to his normal everyday life in New York, clean shaven, and no one recognizes him ever again. And so now they can actually go on assault. They wouldn't want to just finish off their agent. They want that the agent who has served them for so long to be safe and secure and back home. And now they can launch the assault whenever that happens. And already a sufficient media campaign, negative media publicity has been made against ISIS, in effect against Islam, so that when the expansion for the Greater Israel happens, it will happen very naturally. So that's the insight about Baghdadi. And then again, we have the other report about the new crown princes being nominated by King Salman of Saudi Arabia. So he has removed Mukrin and brought in Mohammed bin Naif, and the second person in that line is his own son, Mohammed bin Salman. A lot has been said since our lecture on, or our talk rather, on the death of Abdullah, the King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia, and the prophecy of the Mahdi, Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. A lot has been said. There are few things which are prophecies which we cannot prove now. For others, we had requested them to be patient, a little bit more patient, for we intend to bring out a lot of other associated talks which goes along with it, which will detail things which could not have been detailed for obvious reasons on that particular talk. It's not just about one talk, it's about a whole lot of issues that needs to be discussed. As I said, the prophecy, if we are just to recollect in very brief terms, it says that after Abdullah's death, which we have proved that this refers to the King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia, the last king, just prior to Salman, which we have proved. So you can watch that video again if you want. For those who haven't already, you can do so. So King Salman, basically the rule of years will be gone and the rule of days and months will begin. We have estimated that the rule of no other king of Saudi Arabia should exceed more than 3 years. It should be less than that. So if that happens, the prophecy fulfills itself. If that doesn't happen, why is 3 years? Go back to the video, the lecture, to have the explanation. If it doesn't happen, then the prophecy is, it does not fulfill. So at that time, you have something to speak about, and we will correct ourselves if required. But it is our firm belief that as of now, we stand by it, that the prophecy will unfold and fulfill itself, inshallah, in the near future. So the coming of Salman itself was a bit of cope in the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and now his changing of the crown prince is a bit of rearranging, and we have to wait and see how much rearranging and things like that can the kingdom of Saudi Arabia withstand before it actually crumbles to pieces, and before Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, he arrives on the scene. But wait a minute, before the coming of the true Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, there will be false Mahdis. Yes, I expect there will be multiple claimants to the Mahdi before the arrival of the true Mahdi, Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. So that's there as well. What are some of the other reports? Not much really. If we have missed some, then they don't hold that sort of an importance as the others. Another report is about ISIS killing some 30 or so Christians, Ethiopian Christians in Libya. What about this? Some of the best reports, some of the best videos, not lectures, videos made in the documentary style, but short videos on ISIS, and not just about ISIS, on a whole lot of relevant issues, contemporary issues on about the geopolitical scenario that's developing, is to be found on a website which has a YouTube channel as well, Storm Clouds Gathering. So if you want to have more insight about ISIS, I recommend that going to the website. We also, inshallah, intend to bring out the truth about ISIS. The overall framework, am I retracting some of my statements which I made previously about ISIS? No, not at all. The overall framework remains. A few details about ISIS needs to be investigated in a little bit more depth. That's what we intend to do, inshallah, in the future, but in a separate video. Besides this, I don't think there's much more that needs our attention that we need to discuss in this session. For example, we have a whole lot of things that also happened about ISIS and Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab. Those things will continue. Nothing major has happened in this month. And what else? We're just trying to recollect a few other things that a whole lot of things. Actually, there was some disgusting news reports mentioning, for example, a Sharia compliant sex shop in Mecca. I mean, these are so disgusting, and these news, and they will try to defend it, and what sorts of nonsense they will try to do about it, and things like that. We don't think that it demands attention, especially since we have discussed some very important issues in this session, especially about the hadith of the earthquake, hadith about the Dajjal's control of climate and weather, and linking those two, and sharing with you some information about HAARP for your own research. And obviously you've seen the clip about HAARP as well, how it can trigger earthquakes. And earthquakes in the future will be more and more man-made and artificial rather than from natural causes. And to add to that, they're planning a tunnel under Mount Everest, and they're saying that it'll join India and China. I mean, do you know what will happen? A tunnel under Earth, under Mount Everest, what does to the stability of the region? Do you have any idea what's going on over here? I mean, these are some of the things. They're deliberately trying to destabilize not just this region, everywhere. I mean, as I said, HAARP can essentially trigger floods, hurricanes, and earthquakes. If it can affect land, water, and air, what's left? Nothing, practically. So these are some of the things. I think that's enough for a monthly analysis. That's more than enough. So that's it for now. We'll return with other important issues as and when we have the time and the energy, and discuss at length about other aspects as well, especially about our series on the Dajjal, which is still pending, about our series on economics, which is still pending, and also about our series on Surah Al-Kahf, which is still pending. These are three of the important series which we have plans to come out sooner rather than later in our lecture series as planned for the future, in the recent future. So that's it for now. Wa akhiru dawana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alamin.